If you've got agoraphobia and you're looking for a proven way to live without it and to overcome it, then you are 1000% in the right place. Hi, my name is Ty Hicks, founder of Mental Health Coaching. I am really, really glad that you're here, and I'm not going to waste your time with some long intro. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. So, as you can see, the title of today's presentation is Free from Agoraphobia in 90 Days, the method that 612 people have used when therapy, medications, and coping mechanisms failed them, all by identifying the game that your subconscious keeps playing and rewriting the rules, which I know might sound a little silly, but I'll explain what that means here shortly. Now, first thing I just want to say right out of the gate is that if I would have heard someone claim that agoraphobia could be overcome in 90 days, back when my anxiety was at its peak, I would have really thought to myself, like, there's just absolutely no way. This is total BS. This guy's, trying to yank my leg, right? How could he be claiming that something that I've been struggling with for months or years or maybe even decades could really just be overcome in 90 days, right? It cannot be that easy. And I just want to point out right out of the gate that if you are skeptical, I really totally get it. I think it's totally reasonable to feel that way. I mean, after all, you have probably tried every freaking thing you can possibly think of to try to deal with the agoraphobia and the anxiety already. You probably have no clue who I am, how this process works. So, of course, it's not going to sound believable, and that's totally fine. But I do want to just let you know right up front that we do have proof that this works. Okay, so for starters, I used to have really, really extreme anxiety for years. And the method that I'll be teaching you today is the one that helped me finally overcome that anxiety when therapy, medication, and coping mechanisms just didn't work. They really just did not pan out for me. And additionally, in the past 8 years of me teaching this method to people professionally, I've had 612 successful clients that I've worked with one on one. And what we do is we survey them before they start using our method, that I'm the one that I'm going to be teaching you today, to assess how severe their anxiety and their agoraphobia might be, depending on what their issue is. And then what we do is we survey them after they've finished implementing this system that I'll be teaching you. And the typical minimum result that they report is a reduction in the severity and frequency by about 75%. So most clients do much better than that in terms of the reduction, but 75% is usually the standard minimum that our typical client will experience when they use that system. So if that sounds unbelievable, one thing I invite you to do is you can go to our website anytime you want. We've got hundreds and hundreds. We've got 241 documented case studies where people have either recorded their experience in video, or in writing, and they just describe their experience directly online. You can hear it directly from them. And also, in the 8 years I've been doing this, we've maintained a 5-star rating online as well, as long as I've been teaching this method. So you can always just go to ty-hicks.com/testimonies. You can see it right there. It's all right there. And while we have provided all of those too, it's just important to realize, like, most companies are not transparent with their client results, but we really pride ourselves on doing that. So while we do have hundreds of documented proven case studies of the method I'm going to be showing you today working for all types of anxiety, the cool thing is that agoraphobia is actually one of the most common types of issues that our clients come to us to help them solve, especially since the COVID pandemic happened. Lots of people started dealing with this, and so it became something that we got really, really skilled at helping people through. And today I'm going to be showing you why agoraphobia feels so persistent, so exhausting, why everything you've tried so far has failed. And more importantly, I'm going to show you the new proven way to get rid of it for once and for all, that's working incredibly well for people like you. Because the real truth you want to understand is that if you're struggling with agoraphobia, it is not your fault. And it's not because you're broken. It's not because it can't be fixed. It's because you've probably been following a system that was really never designed to actually fix the problem in the first place. Okay. So let's just go ahead and dive in and talk about exactly how to do that. Now, first off, Who is this for? Just so that you know you're in the right place. Well, firstly, this is really for anybody who is struggling actively with agoraphobia. If you've tried therapy, you've tried medication, different coping tools, and somehow you just still feel like you're trapped in a cycle of avoidance. Maybe those things you've tried so far has helped a little bit, but really not enough to give you that like real freedom that you're after. You know what I mean? Or maybe you're simply looking for a way to overcome the anxiety that you feel away from home without relying on therapy or medication. Some people, just don't really believe in those options. Okay, and this is also for you if you feel anxious just looking, or excuse me, just thinking about going too far from home or from your like quote safe space. Okay, so basically, if the idea of being stuck in a public place makes your chest tighten, if you are, consistently avoiding situations like grocery stores and highways or restaurants or even just like standing in line because you're scared you won't be able to escape if the anxiety hits. This is definitely for you if you compulsively try to map out like every exit, every route, every backup plan before you go anywhere, just trying to feel, some sort of sense of control. And this is really for you if even if a part of you knows that you're safe, like intellectually in your head, you're safe, your body just really feels like something terrible is going to happen, the second you step too far outside of your comfort zone. Okay. So if that sounds like you, I just want you to know, I see you, I get you. I've been in a spot where you are at currently. This message is completely for you. Okay. So today, what's really awesome is we're going to be answering the most important question for overcoming the agoraphobia. Now, whether you realize this is the most important question for overcoming, the agoraphobia or the anxiety or not, this is really what it is. And here's really the key question we need to answer. How do we stop trying to respond to the surface level symptoms of agoraphobia and then finally eliminate it at the source? Okay, so if you have agoraphobia, one thing is you already know that your mind continuously has automatic negative thoughts that are totally involuntary anytime you're about to even consider going outside of your current comfort zone. And you probably waste a ton of time and energy constantly reacting to those automatic thoughts and trying to manage them. And so the entire idea behind a coping mechanism is to be able to respond to those anxious thoughts in a way that brings some relief. Now, if you think about it, if you knew how to finally address the true source of the agoraphobia anxiety, where your mind is no longer automatically generating the anxious thoughts to begin with, well, you would basically have no more limitations on being able to live the life that you want to live, right? You'd have no more need of all of the coping mechanisms either, right? So I want to take this a step further though. So not just how do we do this, and not just how do we do this in 90 days or less, but in addition, how do we do this in a simple, easy, common sense, proven way that we know is going to last, right? How do we do this without you having to rely on band-aid solutions like medication where you kind of trade on one unwanted feeling for an unwanted side effect? How do we do this without you feeling like you're just sitting in a room with a therapist talking about the same stuff over and over, waiting endlessly to be given some kind of clarity, to be given a real plan, when instead it just feels like you are kind of spinning your wheels forever? Okay. How do we do this without doing something completely bizarre and a total Hail Mary like hypnosis or energy work or acupuncture or, basically like any of these other kind of crazy things out in the world that, hey, I'm sure that they provide some value, but let's be honest, they're not really dealing with the source of the problem. And then how do we do this without exerting a lot of effort, like using some crazy exposure therapy system might do, which a lot of times people with agoraphobia have been told they need to do. So that's really the question we're going to answer today. Now, in case you're still, kind of thinking maybe this just isn't really possible to do, just want to take one extra second to introduce myself a little bit more thoroughly because I really want you to get that it really is possible. And the biggest thing that usually impedes people from overcoming any type of anxiety, agoraphobia especially, is the belief that it cannot be overcome, right? Like you cannot solve a problem that you have convinced yourself is unsolvable. So, again, like I said, my name is Ty Hicks, founder of Mental Health Coaching. And like I said, too, my anxiety was debilitating back in the day. It was so bad, actually, it made me depressed, made me suicidal, in fact. I had a suicide plan that was interrupted kind of last minute. And then I was put in a psych hospital for about 10 days. And then, I tried therapy and multiple medications for years. And they just did not work for me really at all. I mean, they added a little bit of value. I should be fair to that, but it didn't really create that lasting solution that I needed. And it was really only once I developed this process that I'm going to be teaching you that I finally overcame the anxiety. And I've since stayed anxiety free for about 15 years without any medications, therapy, or relying on any coping mechanisms. Okay. So now don't get me wrong, my life is not totally perfect, right? I'm still human. I have the occasional negative thought or feeling here or there, but the difference is I no longer have like anxiety. You know what I mean? Like just the only thing will happen is like I'll just have like the normal stuff you're supposed to have. Like feeling a little worried when like a car legitimately almost hits me, you know what I mean? So, but that's very, very rare. And if I ever get a little nervous in a situation like that, like within 60 seconds, I'm calm again. So it's not a big deal. And as I said a second ago, excuse me, not only has this worked incredibly well for me, but we've now gotten hundreds and hundreds of case studies as well. So over the past 8 years, I've helped 612 clients use this process to overcome their anxiety too. I even actually got the really cool opportunity to teach this to Olympic athlete Abby Napton to help her overcome her performance anxiety and help her land a spot on Team USA. So she randomly was referred to me by a previous client, and it took us about 9 weeks to do that. So because our process is working better than basically anything else out there, and it works for any type of anxiety that there is, we just have to customize it a little bit per person. What's happened is that we've gotten a ton of copycats over the years. But the thing is, like, no one is getting this right. And what I'm going to do today is really show you the fastest and most effective way to do this. Okay. So before I dig into that, let's quickly review what is no longer working for people, because the sad reality is that 90% of what's being taught in the mental health industry today just simply doesn't work, and it just takes way too long. But people have no clue that there is an alternative available that's working so much better. And I really want to cover this with you because there's so many ads out there, there's so much content, there's so many people trying to rope you into one strategy or another. And I really wouldn't be doing my job as an industry leader if I didn't make it really clear to you, what works and what doesn't, because things have changed. Okay, so what's happening in the industry right now? What is going on? So, firstly, in the past few years, there's basically three main things that have been happening that are really leading people astray and really kind of ruining their mental health, honestly. And you've probably seen a little bit of this. So, first, the rate of prescriptions being thrown at anxious people has never been higher. Okay. So, ever since the COVID pandemic, more and more people are getting prescribed anti-anxiety medication, even though the results that those medications produce has really never been lower. So, in fact, behavioral health business did a study and found that antidepressant prescriptions have increased by approximately 21% from 2019 to 2022, with a notable rise in telehealth prescriptions from 1.5% in 2019 to 31.4% in 2022. Okay, now that trend has actually continued, even though it's been several years since then. And that's because well meaning people like yourself who just want to feel some kind of relief mistakenly believe that the source of their anxiety is biochemical, even though this has been proven multiple times to be empirically completely false. Okay, so let me explain, because most people are totally unaware of this, even though this research has been around for a while. So, a recent peer-reviewed medical meta-study, which is basically the highest caliber of academic research that there is. It means it was conducted by medically trained and certified professionals. It was conducted by a team of researchers, and then it was submitted and for peer review and peer reviewed. Okay, so the first thing that these people found, this is from the University of College London, is, quote, there is no conclusive evidence that low serotonin levels cause depression or anxiety. Despite the popularity of the serotonin theory, research suggests that no significant difference in serotonin activity between those with and without depression or anxiety. So, furthermore, quote, the chemical imbalance theory was heavily promoted by pharmaceutical companies in the 1990s to market SSRIs and also other medications, by the way, benzodiazepines and so forth, even though studies now show that SSRIs do not correct a serotonin imbalance. Furthermore, quote, clinical trials have demonstrated that SSRIs are often barely distinguishable from placebos in terms of effectiveness. Okay. So that's from the University of College London. And then additionally to that, even more research has shown that the serotonin theory is not supported by scientific evidence and should no longer be presented as a factual explanation of depression or anxiety. That's from Molecular Psychiatry. And then this is from Science Daily. Quote, SSRIs and similar treatments only have any kind of positive effect in about 50% of patients, and only 25% achieve full symptom relief. Okay, and that's from Science Daily. So now a lot of people with agoraphobia have tried SSRIs. Many of them have tried benzodiazepines. It's pretty uncommon for them to be prescribed something like lithium or something like that. But the key thing to understand is that this entire idea that anxiety is a biochemical issue and that it can be corrected through adjusting the biochemistry in your brain, that was actually literally just a theory. It was never proven. It was just a theory. And that theory had been promoted pretty heavily as a way to justify the pharmaceutical industry, right? So I'm not like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I'm not saying these people are evil or any type of thing like that. It's just that incentives matter, right? And so at a time when the public was looking for relief and the whole idea of anxiety was really kind of coming on the map, like in the late 70s and 80s, people were looking for some sort of relief. And so it started to get treated like it was just a medical issue, basically, as if it was like diabetes or something like that. But the most recent research shows it's not anything like that. And so that's an important thing to understand. So again, just this last one I think is really important, regardless of what type of medication you've tried. Quote, SSRIs and similar treatments only have any kind of positive effect in about 50% of patients, any kind of positive effect in about 50% of patients, and only 25% achieve full symptom relief. Okay. And this has all been reproven. So that study that I was just quoting was in 2022, not too long ago, overall. But that is what's interesting is that it's actually just been reproven in 2022. So this was actually established by researchers in 2015, and then also going back as far as 2005, this whole biochemical imbalance theory has been debunked. Okay, so in 2015, one pair of researchers found that, quote, the FDA had originally accepted aspirational language that the drugs help to restore the brain's chemical imbalance and bring serotonin levels back to normal, even though both claims were and remain scientifically meaningless, end quote. So there's just no such thing as a, proper established range of biochemicals in the brain. It was totally a theory, and the entire theory that it was caused by a biochemical imbalance is just a myth. It's been debunked 3 times in the past 25 years, but the public does not know that. It's not widely known. And why is that? Because you see a advertisement probably 10 times a day for an anti-anxiety or antidepressant medication on TV or on your streaming service or whatever. So these messages of you can get relief from medication are still pushed over and over and over again. And now it's become almost like the new wave, because now people are turning to supplements and things to reduce their anxiety, when it's really sort of the same old antiquated line of thinking. Okay. And again, I'm just telling you what the medical research says, So I did found that medication didn't work well for me. So that was kind of my own personal experience. And recently, we've found all of this medical research that's out there that people just don't know about. So I'm just kind of reporting to you what's going on. And the thing too that you want to understand is that when SSRIs are not working, the usual next route to take is some sort of a benzo, right? Like Xanax, Klonopin, something like that. But these are really just as ineffective. So this is from 2023 from the journal Psychological Medicine. Quote, a 2023 meta-analysis found that only one of five clinical trials showed a positive efficacy outcome, while the rest were negative and did not demonstrate effectiveness. That was benzodiazepines. Okay, so these are just not really working, especially for people with agoraphobia. And I want to be clear, like, a lot of people, when I share this research with them, they kind of get upset, they get angry. They're like, well, why in the hell have I been on medication for 10 years, 20 years if the research and the data just shows that not only did they not work, but it's based on a theory that was never even true in the first place. So before you decide you want to like call your doctor and, scream at them, I just want to like be very clear. I don't blame doctors for this or psychiatrists for doing this. There's really three main things that doctors and psychiatrists do to try to help their patients, right? So, number one, they try to help their patients feel better with whatever tools they have available. And if they are unaware of an additional tool being available, then they obviously can't recommend that additional tool. They can only recommend the things that they know are available, right? Number two, they recommend things that other doctors are doing that they believe are going to help their patients, right? Because if other doctors are doing it, then it would make sense if you're a doctor, like, well, hey, these other doctors are doing it. There must be something to that. Let's go ahead and try it with my patients. And then third, what they tend to do is they tend to keep recommending what they are used to recommending, right? So there's a lot of inertia in the medical industry. I don't have the direct study or quote from this, so forgive me for that. But I remember seeing some research that found the average amount of time it takes for new medical knowledge to go from the discovery phase to actually being implemented in the daily practice of doctors is at least 10 years. At least 10 years. Very often it's more than that, just by nature of how the healthcare industry works. So they're just doing what they've always done, right? And the thing is, psychiatrists even usually don't even know how these drugs usually work. So this quote here was from a public interview with a psychiatrist named Daniel Carlat. This was conducted by Science Daily. And he said, quote, we don't, as meaning psychiatrists, we don't know how the medications actually work in the brain. So I'll often say something like the way Zoloft works is it increases the level of serotonin in your brain. And presumably, the reason you're depressed or anxious is that you have some sort of a deficiency. And I tell my patients that not because I really believe it, but because because I know the evidence really isn't there for us to understand the mechanism. I think I say that because patients want to know something. And they want to know that as physicians, we have some basic understanding of what we're doing when we're prescribing medications. They certainly don't want to know that a psychiatrist essentially has no idea how these medications work. Okay. End quote. So, in short, doctors are just doing what doctors are trained to do, diagnose and prescribe medication. And they don't really know how to actually get to the real root of the subconscious problem. And how could they? I mean, it's not their expertise or their specialty. They're just looking at anxiety and agoraphobia as if it's like the same thing as diabetes or heart disease, and it's not. They prescribe drugs because they're trying to use any tool in their tool belt that may produce results. But, again, the bottom line here is SSRIs and similar treatments are only somewhat effective in about 50% of patients, and only 25% achieve full symptom relief. So what happens is a lot of people with agoraphobia and anxiety, they simply assume that their doctors are giving them a solution to their problem when they get a prescription, and they have no clue that it's statistically very unlikely to help at all. It's basically a coin flip whether it's going to help at all. And then it's certainly not going to help solve the problem. It's a 75% chance it's not going to do that. And not only that, by the way, but more research is coming out every single year now that people have been on these drugs for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And it is now linked anti-anxiety medication with an increased chance of developing Alzheimer's, cardiovascular issues, cognitive impairment, dementia, And then, of course, like the really, really scary stuff like serotonin syndrome, tardive dyskinesia, not to mention just the baseline physical dependence, that it creates. So most people do what I call playing the pharmaceutical lottery. All right, they just think that they should do whatever their doctor recommends and that they're going to find the right medication cocktail eventually, right? So this does work for some people, but most people will waste months or years tweaking with their dosages and prescriptions only to get very small improvements in their results. And we just got to kind of ask ourselves at the end of the day, like, why in the world would we ingest something into our body for years and years that isn't even solving the problem, right? It just gives us weird side effects. Most doctors agree you can't take it forever. It literally causes your body to have a physical addiction. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, right? Now, to be 100% clear, I am not in any way recommending that, you go to your medicine cabinet, you flush your pills down the drain. Okay, do not do that. I'm not recommending that. I'm not telling you to stop taking your medications. Please hear me very clearly. So even for the clients that like I work with directly, one-on-one to help deal with the root of the anxiety, I always tell them right away, we have to deal with the root of the anxiety problem first, and then you can work with your doctor to responsibly wean off your medications so that way you don't experience a complication, due to a withdrawal. But if you try to get rid of the medications without dealing with the root of the problem of the anxiety first, then you're just going to amplify the anxiety way higher. You're going to make things way worse. Don't do that. Okay. So just know that if you have been trying to solve your anxiety problem or agoraphobia problem with medication and it has not worked, that doesn't mean you're defective. What it means is you are a part of the 75% of the population the medication is just flat out insufficient for. And that's really not your fault. Okay. So medication is leaving people high and dry, certainly did for me. What other options is the industry providing these days? Well, secondly, one thing that's been happening in the industry is a lot of people are turning to the new variations of talk therapy that are emerging now. Talk therapy, interestingly, is the oldest. It is the absolute oldest method out there for trying to deal with anxiety. It was created in the late 1800s, if you can believe that. And what most people do not realize is that in many ways, it really has not changed all that much since then. It is very ancient, really. Now, a lot of people have had a lot of hope in recent years, especially like once the pandemic happened quite a while ago now, because it seems on the surface that a lot of new methods and approaches are out there. Okay. But the reality is that this really has to do more with innovation in the delivery of the method and also innovation in the marketing methods, not innovation in the core method being used. Okay. So, firstly, there's big companies that have made talk therapy more accessible through telehealth, okay, like Talkspace and BetterHelp. And then on top of that, in the past 20 or so years, there have been very slight variations of the talk therapy model that have popped up. Okay, so things like DBT, EMDR, hypnotherapy, and the like. And a lot of people believe that these variations are the missing link that have kept them from anxiety recovery. But interestingly, when you look at the data, the overwhelming amount of people are not finding talk therapy or these other variations to really be sufficient. So, according to the NHS, the National Health Service over in England, quote, despite the widespread use of talk therapy, improvement rates for anxiety remain below 50%, indicating the need for more comprehensive options. Okay, that was back in 2024. So, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, quote, many patients report feeling they have plateaued with talk therapy after several months, with dissatisfaction stemming from its inability to address the root cause of anxiety, particularly in more severe cases. Patients often report that while talk therapy helps them cope, it doesn't provide the tools necessary to fully overcome their anxiety. End quote. So, in the 8 years of my career doing this professionally, I've done about 21,000 hours of documented consulting and coaching with people who have every kind of severe anxiety variation that there is. And what I found is that well over 75% of the people I've spoken with report the therapy has been somewhat helpful, but very, very far from sufficient to provide them lasting relief. And there is, a portion of the population that find therapy very helpful, but there is a really large portion of the population where they just never find it to be sufficient, right? And especially for agoraphobia, interestingly, talk therapy is just notoriously insufficient. So, why is it that so many people are not getting results? What's going on here? Well, what most people with agoraphobia or anxiety don't really understand is that there basically are two key things that keep therapists from being able to truly help some patients experience lasting relief, even though the therapists themselves truly care deeply about their patients and want the best for them. So it's neither the therapist's fault nor the patient's. It's just that the entire system has some major limits baked into it that keep it from working for everybody. So the first major limitation is the broken patient myth. And basically, what that is that therapists are trained that anxiety and phobias are basically just lifelong conditions. They cannot be overcome. And mind you, this theory is like 200 years old. Okay, so the basis of classifying anxiety and phobias as permanent disorders, that was Sigmund Freud's work back in the 1880s. People don't understand that that's where that came from. And so at the time he came up with that theory, literally cigarettes were being prescribed to treat asthma. Okay, I kid you not. Bloodletting, you remember that? Bloodletting was still being used as a medical practice, and literally lobotomies were rising in popularity. Okay. Now, of course, therapists don't do things exactly like Freud did back then, but there are certain assumptions that are still held on to today, including the idea that whatever the variation of anxiety is that the person is dealing with, it is largely unchangeable by the patient or the therapist, especially when it is an extreme automatic reaction to certain triggers like agoraphobia is. Okay. So this means that every single thing they are taught in school is based on the premise that your patient is never going to recover, but you can help them feel a little better. In other words, you can help them cope through indefinite therapy. So, let me ask you kind of a simple question, right? Like, would you ever hire a mechanic to work on your car who just really didn't know how to fix it, right? They might be super nice, they might care about you, but they just don't know how to fix it. And in fact, they were never trained how to fix it. They were only ever trained to kind of fix it, like make it a little better. I mean, I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't, right? No matter how kind of a person they are. And the second big thing that keeps people from getting great results in therapy, especially if they've got agoraphobia, is what's called the non-directive principle. Okay, so basically, Freud's entire theory was that if you just simply sat someone down, you let them talk and talk and talk, and if the therapist did not intervene with any direction or advice, that the patient would eventually arrive at new conclusions on their own and then work through their issues. So this was literally called, and is still to this day, called the talking cure. Okay, and therapists built on this idea over the years. So Carl Rogers, you may have heard of him. He built on this idea in the 1950s. And basically, what he told all therapists to do is to have unconditional positive regard for the patients. And so basically, you just sit in the room, you don't judge them, you wish them the best, you want them to change. And just by holding a space for them and wishing that they change, that the change will occur. That was kind of the basis of that idea. And even though today's modern therapists will offer like some advice, it really almost never goes beyond their standard set of go-to tips and tricks that only offer mild coping at best, right? So you've probably heard a therapist say something to you like, "Hey, let me teach you a breathing exercise you can do," or "Have you tried meditation?" Or "You just got to get yourself out there, or "Let's try some tapping," or "Hey, try to think a little bit more positively." Simple stuff like that, where you kind of, it goes in one ear out the other. You're kind of like, well, yeah, but like how, right? How am I supposed to think more positively? Beyond that, therapists are literally taught in school to, quote, be like a mirror, reflecting the patient's thoughts and feelings back to them for further exploration. And so that's why you've probably heard things like, how does that make you feel? Right? Tell me more about that. Okay, many times before. And the bottom line here is that there is really a major mismatch between patient and therapist expectations of what the purpose of therapy is. So patients usually want a plan. Right? They want a roadmap to recovery and they just want to feel normal again and they want to know that there's a plan to do that. But the thing is, no therapist is ever trained in how to provide their patients with a true roadmap for lasting recovery. In fact, therapists are taught that no such map exists, which is kind of the really weird, interesting thing. They're only ever trained to really help a patient embrace a lifetime of coping, right? And so the thing is that patients believe that their therapist either has the plan or they think like, well, some therapist out there must have the plan. But the truth is there is no plan. None of them have been taught what that plan is. So therapists, if anything, they actually believe that you have the plan hidden somewhere inside of you. The only plan is for you to keep coming to therapy and to keep talking, with the hope that eventually and almost accidentally you will feel better. I mean, that's kind of the whole goal. And, to be completely, totally clear, I want to just make this very, very simple. Like the whole non-directive approach, it does work for some people with some issues. This can be very helpful for processing like some grief, some forms of isolated trauma. A portion of the population is able to feel sufficient relief from just talking about it enough. But, again, as we saw in 2024, less than 49% of people reported experiencing sufficiently positive results, according to the NHS, right? So that leaves over half of the population who are suffering out there hung out to dry. I mean, that's a little alarming to me. And the people who keep trying it, who don't get very far, think it's their fault or that it's a matter of mismatched personalities or that the relief is going to come eventually. But the thing is, if so few people are getting satisfactory results, why in the world are so many people staying in therapy for years on end, right? And the real main reasons they do that are number one, it is free or seemingly low cost, even though you end up spending countless hours there, years of your life, wasted potentially talking endlessly about the issue instead of solving it. Like, people will say, well, oh, well, therapy is free. No, it's absolutely not free. It's incredibly expensive, right? It just depends on what you value your time as. What do going to 5 years of therapy when you could have gotten the issue dealt with using a simple method like the one I'm going to teach you today in just a couple months? That's incredibly expensive. That cost you 5 years of your life. Not to even mention, the lost peace of mind, the lost sleep, the lost time with your family, the lost joy. And then, there is a financial cost to it, even if your insurance is paying for it. Like, what is an hour of your time worth? When you're showing up at your best, what is an hour of your time worth? I mean, that's the bare minimum of what your therapy costs you. Okay. And the second reason people do this too is well, first of all, the perception it's free. Second of all, it's all the client really knows how to do. And so it seems better to do something rather than nothing, right? And then third, the client will tend to keep hoping that at some point the breakthrough is going to come, right? They're holding out hope that it is all part of the therapist's plan to some degree. So what I want you to understand is I want you to imagine that your car is broken down, right? It's not functioning properly. You can't get from A to B. So what do? You go to the mechanic. And the mechanic tells you, well, I'll tell you what, your car is never going to function fully the same way again, but here's what you can do. You can keep bringing your car back to my shop every week and we'll talk about it. Maybe you will figure out how to fix it yourself if we talk about it for a few years. I can give you a few things, you can do to kind of fix it. I can put an air freshener in there. I can wipe the windshield for you. Some people do start to feel better about their broken cars after a while of coming here for a long time. So it might help you. I can't guarantee anything, but it might help you. Oh, and don't worry, right? Your car insurance will cover it. I mean, does that sound like a good plan? I don't think so. So the two major limitations of the broken patient myth and the non-directive principle, those were really deliberately why I chose not to become a therapist, and to find my own way to help people get the recovery that I had achieved. So people ask me sometimes like, oh, did you go to school for this? I'm like, no, because I actually wanted to learn what works, like why would I go to school where they've been teaching the same thing for 50 years and they're going to tell me that you can't even help people with anxiety that much. Why would I go do that? Makes no sense at all. So what I want to do too is be totally clear, right? I am not coming after therapists here, right? I don't have a vendetta. There's plenty of people in the world who need help. I'm glad that therapists exist. The vast majority of therapists are incredibly caring, intelligent people. They're just doing what they've been trained to do. Many of them are my colleagues and friends. Many of them come to me to get trained in my method more and more every year, in fact. And many of them are very effective at helping a portion of the population to deal with certain issues. But I see their struggle and frustration in really trying to help a portion of people that they're just not trained in how to deal with. And it's really not their fault, that they don't know how to help you. But more importantly, it's not your fault, that the whole process is not getting you what you want. I mean, the data shows the majority of people just find it to not be sufficient. So if you tried therapy and you found it somewhat valuable, but, really far from sufficient, you're not alone. Data shows you're in the majority. Okay, now the third thing that's been happening in the industry, pretty fascinating. And if you're anything like I was when my anxiety was at its peak, if you've already tried therapy and tried medication and those didn't really work for you, you've probably tried to solve the agoraphobia problem yourself. So, especially in the past like 10 years or so, people are trying to be their own therapist or mental health coach by turning to the vast abyss of the internet for answers. And what's interesting is if you're like most people with substantial agoraphobia, most of your time on the internet is probably spent basically in like three main chunks. Okay. So the first would be compulsively Googling, the potential meanings behind every sensation in your body. Once you find that worst possible explanation of what you're feeling, your mind latches onto it, refuses to let go. And then you end up going down a click hole looking for proof, quote, proof that something is wrong with you until you're convinced that there is. Number two, you probably spend a good amount of time like doom scrolling, looking through funny, distracting, meaningless posts or games to help your mind be temporarily distracted from the like looming fear of being away from home, waiting to pop up again. And then third, you probably spend a good amount of time trying to look for real, tangible answers on how to feel better. But what you end up probably finding is a lot of like very cheesy, kind of like surface level content that makes you feel good for an instant, or makes you feel seen or validated. But after months and months of consuming it, your life really kind of still looks basically like exactly the same. You know what I mean? So what's probably happened for you is that your social media feeds are probably littered with all sorts of motivational, kind of pump up, feel good stuff. And that's because mental health influencers are now a dime a dozen. And I'm curious if you actually know why that has happened, why there's been such a big influx in influencers in the past 10 years. So there's a couple of key things going on. Number one, firstly, there's a rise of anxious people in the world, and so there's a growing audience for it, right? So people who are struggling emotionally are looking for answers. But number two, the type of content that people who are struggling with anxiety tend to engage with, like click and comment on the most, is content that simply validates how they currently feel as opposed to gives them like a real viable solution that they can implement. So I'm curious if you've ever seen a social media post like this before. Uh, in today's world of constant stimulation, it's inevitable that you will feel overwhelmed. It's not your fault that the world is designed to make you feel anxious. It's okay to not be okay. Don't let anyone ever tell you differently. And if they do, it's time to say goodbye. This is a friendly reminder to take a breath, be kind to yourself, and send positive energy out into the world. Okay, so have you ever seen a post like this? Of course you have. Of course you have, because they all sound like this. And do you know why? It's because it's actually a formula that they are following. There's a formula that's being used to pump these pieces of content out in record time. And now with AI, it's happening even more. Okay, so a post like that, is strategically crafted not to give you a true step-by-step system for recovery. It is designed to get you to click the like button. That's it. That's what it's designed to do. It validates how you already feel without giving you any real way to address the root of the problem. Okay, so either that or you will see a post like this. Here's 10 signs that you might actually have XYZ exceptionally rare condition you've never heard of. Number one, you feel tired when you wake up in the morning. Number two, you feel hungry multiple times a day, especially after several hours between meals. Number three, you often feel stressed when thinking about day-to-day responsibilities. Number four, you disagree with others from time to time, on and on and on. Okay, so this type of content is what's causing more and more people to do something that has never happened in history before. It's called self-diagnosis. So this is from several years ago now, but so it's probably even more now. But a study in 2023 found 1 in 4 Americans have self-diagnosed a mental health disorder based on information from a social media platform, with TikTok being a notable source. Okay. And the thing is, it's causing people to believe the proliferation of this content. It's now causing people to believe that they know what their real underlying problem is when they actually have no clue. And neither does the person posting the content. It's just that the consumer of the content really wants to feel certain about what the source of the problem is. And so I consult with people all the time who tell me that their agoraphobia is through the roof, but they are totally sure that they have to, keep doing their exposure therapy or that they need to use their daily affirmations. And I have to remind them, very lovingly, that if they knew what the real problem was and how to solve it, they wouldn't still have the problem anymore. Okay, so the fact that they have the problem is evidence that they have a blind spot. They're enthusiastically running in the wrong direction. And the reason your feeds are littered with this stuff is because influencers know that the vast majority of people are far more interested in just feeling understood, and they are craving to have an explanation of what their problem is. But interestingly, the people who continue to prioritize validation based information over transformation based informations, those are the people who stay stuck. And mark my words, over the next 10 years, the people who continue to consume that stuff are going to be the ones that stay stuck, because it, whether you know it or not, what's happening is your brain is getting like addicted through dopamine to that type of content, and it creates a confusion because you feel good in an instant, or you feel good for a few minutes, or maybe even an hour, but that type of information never creates lasting recovery. And so, again, let me be very clear. I'm not knocking all mental health influencers. They're just doing what they're incentivized to do. They create content that will get massive engagement, but will result in very little lasting transformation for people. And they only teach band-aids, not how to address the root of the problem, which is kind of the big deal. And so this is a big reason why, my team and I have actually strategically not focused on building a massive social media following, but instead just ruthlessly doubling down on making sure that a really core small group of one-on-one clients is taken care of immensely. That's the priority. The transformation is the priority, not getting a bunch of engagement and becoming famous. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with eating some candy like every once in a while that just makes you feel good for a few minutes, like that type of content that you see on your feeds does. But just remember, like, eventually you've got to get your vegetables if you want to actually be healthy and prevent disease. And the willingness to go beyond the surface level and actually address the root problem, that's what really separates the people who merely want to recover from the people who really will. Okay. So what I want to ask you is this, right? Like, if our goal is to simply do what we said before, right? Retrain the brain to stop having these automatic anxious thoughts in the first place, why don't we just focus on doing that as quickly as possible as opposed to all of this other junk, right? So what really is the method that does work when these other things are just not really working and helping people out? Well, what I want to tell you is, if you're really truly serious about not just managing your agoraphobia, but learning how to overcome it, there is one simple concept that you have to understand. This key concept is what enabled me to finally overcome my own anxiety, stay anxiety free for so long. And I have really never seen an exception to this with the 612 successful clients that we've had. Okay. So the first key concept you've got to understand is what we call the formula for peace of mind. And right out of the gate, I know that sounds sort of silly. It might sound like I'm exaggerating here, to say like, ooh, there's a formula for peace of mind, but it's just a simple way to kind of teach this. And if you'll bear with me, just try this on for size. I think you'll see that this not only makes sense, but it becomes very valuable here in a few minutes. Okay, so the formula for peace of mind is when your current life conditions, as in like how your life is right this minute, when that matches up to what we call your subconscious rules for life. Okay, that's when you're going to feel peace of mind. And you don't have to take my word for it either, right? You can verify if this formula is true just by looking at your own life experience, would be more than fine. So just try this on for size for a second. So in your life, there's probably at least one area where you are generally satisfied. So it could be your health, could be your finances, could be your business, could be your marriage, could be your relationship with your kids, or at least, one of your kids. Not everybody is really fully satisfied in every area of their life, especially if anxiety is in your daily life, but we all tend to have at least like one area that we're pretty satisfied with. And hell, it could even just be one friend you have in your life or the house you live in, right? So don't overthink it. So just go ahead and ask yourself, like, what is one area in your life that you would say that you generally feel at peace with? Okay. Just think about that for a sec. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and use a real example here. Okay. So I had a client a little while ago who had severe agoraphobia. His name was Tom. And Tom has shared his story publicly many times in our community. He's given us his blessing to talk about his situation. And when I asked him at the time, when we were just getting started, as he was going through our method, I asked him, what is an area of his life that he was generally pleased with? And he immediately was like, my wife. Love my relationship with my wife. And I said, great. It's awesome. What is it that you love about your relationship with your wife? And he said, well, she is always kind and supportive. We share a lot of the same interests. We look at the world the same way. When we have disagreements, we are both respectful to each other. And I said, great, that's awesome. So just go ahead and imagine hypothetically that all of a sudden your wife was maybe not so kind, right? Let's say she developed some big views about the world that now differed from your views. A lot of the things you used to look at the same way, now she looks at them a very different way. And then also, if the disagreements you guys had got like a lot more heated, okay, would that make you anxious? Would that cause you to ruminate and be in your head quite a bit? And he said, yes, absolutely, for sure. And the reason why it would create anxiety, the reason it would start to cause rumination where there currently was no rumination, is because some of Tom's subconscious rules for a marriage are that, number one, we should be kind to each other. Number two, we should share a lot of interests. Number three, we should share a lot of views. Number four, we should be respectful during disagreements. And the thing was that those rules had become, a big part of Tom's subconscious beliefs because of his own past experiences, probably a lot of them from his childhood, right? Seeing his parents and how they had a relationship, things like that. And what I want you to understand is that all a rule is it is a subconscious belief about what has to happen. Okay, so because this area of Tom's life matched up with Tom's subconscious rules, he felt happy about his relationship with his wife. Okay, he did not feel any anxiety or unrest about his relationship with her. He didn't spend a lot of time in his head thinking about it. But the thing is, if these core subconscious expectations were to not be met, then you can bet your bottom dollar that it would cause Tom anxiety. And his mind would be ruminating about his wife all the time, right? He would be having thoughts like, what happened to us? Why won't they understand? Things like that. Okay. And if he was in that situation and didn't either make changes with his wife to, correct the imbalance or make changes to his expectations, then the anxiety would become more and more consuming as his mind basically tried to find a way to balance the formula. Okay, does that make sense? So if you look at the things that you have anxious thoughts about, it's because there is an unmet set of subconscious rules. I promise you. Now, they are probably, as I said, subconscious, which just means that they are things that you're unaware of, just like, Tom was unaware of his subconscious rules, but they are there. Okay, more on that in a second. So I was able to show Tom why he was pleased with his relationship with his wife. But when we took a look at Tom's agoraphobia and anxiety, it became clear that there were a different set of subconscious rules that were really just not matching up with how his life was currently in certain situations. So he told me about how, he would feel sensations in his body consistently and that he would want to know exactly what they meant. He told me that as soon as he would need to leave the house or a thought of visiting a family member across town would come up, his mind would involuntarily imagine the worst possible scenario taking place, having a panic attack while driving, getting in a car accident, or needing to go to the hospital. Then what would happen was his mind would run through the entire route from A to B and consider all of the ways that he would need to get back home or get to the hospital if needed. Right? He said that if he ever managed to get someplace outside of his comfort zone, he could never focus or really fully relax unless he popped a Xanax, basically. And so, what I helped Tom do is I helped him uncover what his subconscious rules were that were causing the anxious thoughts in the first place. Okay. So, firstly, we uncovered that some of Tom's subconscious rules were number one, I have to be within 5 minutes of my house in order to feel calm. Number two, I have to have 100% certainty that I have no health issues in my body at any time. Number three, I have to be able to leave whenever I want without waiting on anyone or anything. Number four, I have to have someone else in the car with me. Okay, so can you relate to any of these beliefs, by the way? These are probably some of the things that you believe deep down too, but I doubt that you ever knew that these were things that you really believed. And that's kind of entirely the point. They are subconscious, basically. And these subconscious beliefs, whether you know it or not, are the most powerful things that are driving your every thought, your every emotion, and your decisions. But we are all completely unaware of what they are until we learn the skill set to uncover them and change them. And so, what this means is that Tom had, like we all do, this set of subconscious rules about what had to happen in order to live life. So, in order for him to go to work, visit with family, go to the store, etc., those rules had to be met. And if those rules weren't met, he couldn't really function. The whole system broke down basically. That's why there are rules. And so the rules he had for his marriage were being followed. So he felt peace of mind in that area. But the rules he had for being able to operate in the world in general, drive around town, go visit family, things like that. Those rules were being violated consistently, and so he felt very anxious and dysfunctional. So it's like having a computer that only knows how to run a program according to a very specific set of rigid conditions. And as soon as you give the computer input that it is not prepared for, it basically just glitches out. Okay, so let's take a look at this basically like a layer deeper. So, what I had to teach Tom in order for him to overcome his agoraphobia and anxiety was what every person who truly wants to do the same really has to learn. What they have to learn is how to rewrite the rules of the subconscious game that your mind is playing to make it winnable. Okay, now what does that mean exactly? Well, basically, I want you to imagine you are playing a board game for the very first time. Okay, so in order to play the board game, you simply need to know two things: the goals of the game and then the rules of the game. Now, if you follow the rules on how to accomplish the goals, you win. If you fail to follow the rules and you do not accomplish the goal, you lose. So, what if I told you that you have been basically subconsciously playing your own game of life according to a simple set of rules ever since you were a child? And that ever since that moment in your life, or excuse me, and every moment of your life, your subconscious is trying to basically win that game. And when you feel like you are winning, you feel happy. and you have zero anxious thoughts. When you feel like you are losing, then you experience anxiety. So let me return to Tom's situation so you can see how this works. So within a few hours, I helped Tom uncover all of his anxiety causing subconscious beliefs or rules, same difference. And what we found out was that before he started experiencing anxiety 30 some years previously, his old subconscious values were the following. Fun was number one, family was number two, and then growth was number three. And so the rule book for his game of life when he was young was basically having fun is the most important thing in my life. As long as I'm having fun, life is pretty good. And beyond having fun, the next most important thing is my family. If my family is doing well and we are having fun together, then life is really good. And while fun is most important and family is also important, I also need to make sure I am growing as a person, becoming a better man. As long as those three things are there, life is fantastic. And so Tom developed those beliefs over the course of his early life. So some of it he adopted from the role models of his parents, some he took from the culture he grew up in, from his spiritual beliefs, his education, and from other mentors and examples he saw along the way. Just like it happens for all of us, his belief system formed over time as he made tons of subconscious decisions about what was truly important to him and what was not important to him. Okay. So if you see, if you put all of our beliefs together, what you get is a model of how the world should be. And basically, when life equals our subconscious model of how the world should be, our rules, we feel peaceful and happy. When life does not equal our subconscious model of how the world should be, for a moment, we feel frustrated or sad. And when we feel like life substantially and consistently does not match up with our subconscious model of how the world should be, we feel the sensation of anxiety as our mind struggles to figure out how to get them to match. And when we conclude that life will never match our subconscious model of how the world should be, then that's when we start to feel depressed. And that's it. That's where all anxiety and depression basically comes from, right there. And for quite a while, Tom was a normal, happy guy with no anxiety. Why? Because this set of rules was pretty easy to get to match up with reality. Fun family growth, right? He was the one in charge of being able to win his own game, and the rules were relatively easy and simple. All he had to do was get his life to match up with the core expectations of prioritizing family, having fun, and then making progress in his career. Pretty simple, pretty easy. And so something happened to Tom that happens to every person who experiences anxiety, though. Without him realizing it, his subconscious rules changed. So for him, it happened in response to what we call a significant emotional event. So if I remember correctly, for him, it was some like near car accident when he was like driving at some point in his 20s, I think. And what Tom didn't realize was that when that significant emotional event happened, his subconscious was rewiring itself. Because after all, the subconscious's number one priority is to keep you alive, not keep you happy. And so what happened was that Tom's subconscious values, in other words, the literal priorities of his nervous system, changed into being number one, 100% certainty, number two, safety, number three, comfort, number four, success, five, family, six, fun. Okay. And his rules for feeling certainty were I have to be within 5 miles, 5 minutes, excuse me, of my house. I have to have 100% certainty that I have no health issues in my body at any given time. I have to be able to leave whenever I want without waiting on anyone or anything. And then also, I have to have someone else in the car with me. Okay. Now, Tom's subconscious rules for life were basically the number one priority I have is to be 100% certain that I'm healthy, safe, and okay. I cannot feel safe or comfortable, let alone even function or focus on family, fun, or success until I am 100% certain that I am okay. And I can only be 100% certain if I am at home or very close to home. If I'm not at home, then I have to be able to leave whenever I want without waiting on anyone or anything. And I have to have someone in the car with me at all times, or else I just cannot do it. So that's how his model of the world changed. So I'm curious, like, can you relate to Tom's story? Because more than likely you can. And the thing that you want to think through is like, what do you think is the likelihood that Tom will be able to consistently have his life match up with those rules? About 0%. So before the significant emotional event, Tom felt peace of mind because his subconscious game of life was winnable. In fact, he felt that he was winning at it basically almost every single day. But when the event occurred and his brain rewired itself, the literal priorities of his nervous system became different without his awareness or permission. And now his mind was basically compulsively trying to get a whole set of rules to be followed that were just never going to be followed consistently. And as a result of his mind requiring things that were never going to happen in order to function or focus on anything else, his mind continuously felt anxious, right? So imagine I sat you down in a chair and I made you play a board game, right? So you cannot leave from your chair until you win the game. You must try your hardest to win, but the only way you can win is if a whole series of things that are outside of your control and that violate the laws of nature take place. Could you see how anxiety inducing that would be? Right? So you see, anxiety is nothing more than your mind trying to win an unwinnable subconscious game. That's really what it comes down to. And for Tom, anytime he was away from home, his brain was perpetually going, I have to be at home right now. Ooh, but I need to be here at my family's house, but I have to be home, but I can't leave. Ooh, but I have to leave, but I can't, but I have to, but I can't. And that's all anxiety is in a nutshell. We have basically a set of subconscious rules wired into our mind that inevitably conflict with how life is going to be. And so therefore we end up chasing our own tails inside of our minds perpetually. And I do want to make a point that is critical to understand here, right? It is not enough to acknowledge that you have unrealistic expectations. Okay, that's not enough. A lot of people think that that's what this is. Every person with agoraphobia knows already that they have unrealistic expectations and that they should let go of them. But the thing is, you also feel compulsively that you can't. Why? Because they are hardwired into the subconscious. So knowing that you shouldn't be governed by those rules is not enough. Knowing better will not make you better. Okay, that's the key thing. Just in the same way that, like, knowing you shouldn't eat fatty, salty foods is not necessarily enough to keep you from eating fatty, salty foods, right? So if all it took for us to make a lasting change in our nervous system and how our nervous system operates, if all it took was us becoming aware that we should stop running our old pattern, then there basically would be no people who want to quit smoking but don't. There would be no such thing as someone who overeats. We would stop worrying about what we can't control as soon as we realize that it doesn't make sense to do. Becoming aware that your mind is governed by these rules is really is only the first step, right? Becoming aware of it. And that means that until you identify each and every one of the subconscious rules your mind is operating by, and then more so rewire them, then you're always going to have the anxiety take place. But once you do actually uncover each and every one and you rewire the brain to follow a different set of rules by default, then the anxiety basically disappears. Okay. So for the sake of simplicity, I've only shared like some of the most important parts of the subconscious rules that Tom had, but there were dozens. And it basically always takes like a couple hours to dig like each and every one of them out of the subconscious. And what I've found over the years is that there really are only 7 core types of anxiety in the world, but every person has their own slightly unique version. Okay. So for some people, their rules revolve around things like, I must be perfect or else I am not good enough and worthy of love. I must please others or else I am not good enough and worthy of love. I must take care of others' problems, or else I am not good enough and worthy of love. For people with agoraphobia, though, the core subconscious belief system is I must be certain of things I cannot be certain of, or else I cannot feel peace, or I must control things that I cannot control, or else I cannot feel peace. So let me again remind you that anxiety is nothing more than your mind trying to win an unwinnable subconscious game. That's all it is. And that means that until you identify each and every one of the subconscious rules that your mind is operating by and rewrite them, the anxiety is going to continue to exist. But once you do uncover the subconscious rules your mind is operating by and then rewire them, rewire the mind to follow a new set of obtainable rules automatically, then the anxiety will disappear. Okay. So, or at least it's only ever always worked when I've taught others how to do it. So if our job is to rewrite the subconscious rules that your mind is operating by, then let's ask ourselves, right? Like, how are we going to do that? Are we going to do that by talking every week for hours on end about your childhood, your triggers, your feelings? Are we going to do that by screwing with the chemicals in your brain and numbing yourself? Are we going to do that by, just allowing the anxiety to exist and try to let it pass by, like mindfulness and meditation or DBT would recommend? Are we going to get that by just trying to white knuckle it and do some exposure therapy? Just, get you to just drive outside of town for 3 hours. Is that really going to work? Are we going to get that by just trying to jam as much positive thinking as we can in our head? Are we going to get that by meditating every day or journaling about our feelings? Or basically like doing any of the other silly things people do because they just don't know what else to do, like sucking on hard candy, box breathing, cutting out caffeine. Okay. No, short answer is no, because every single one of those strategies is simply a way to respond to the anxious thought, not a way to prevent the anxious thought. So remember this, right? The only way to get the anxious thoughts to stop popping up in the first place is to rewrite the unwinnable rules in the subconscious. So you see, when Tom's subconscious believes, I cannot feel certain, safe, and calm unless I am at home, that is metaphorically like the trunk of the tree. Now, the trunk of that core subconscious belief is now going to sprout all kind of anxious thoughts from it, like, well, how far away do we have to drive? How far away is that from the hospital? Do we have to go? What if I lose control? What if I can't do it? Okay, and 100 other variations, basically. So what we can do is we can use coping mechanisms to try to trim all of the tiny branches one by one and temporarily forget that they are there, or we can basically chop the trunk of the tree down, would be another way that we could go about that. And we don't have to focus on 100 different anxious thoughts a day for the rest of our lives just to get through the day. I mean, all we really need to do is number one, identify every anxiety causing belief. Number two, eliminate those unwinnable beliefs and rules. Number three, retrain the brain to follow a winnable set of rules by default. Okay, so for Tom, what that basically meant was rewiring the subconscious to basically look like it did before the agoraphobia was an issue, right? So we retrained the brain to no longer require these things that were not possible for him to obtain in order to feel safe. And we rewired it to automatically focus on the things that were truly most important again. Okay, so for him, right, what he wanted that to be was number one, family at the top. Number two, fun for him was second. And then third was career growth, right? So those were kind of became his new values. In a sense, they were sort of his old values before the significant emotional event caused all the anxiety to begin with. And the things that we got rid of was we got rid of his nervous system requiring to feel 100% certain about things. We got rid of the rule that I have to be within 5 minutes of my house or else I cannot feel calm, I cannot feel safe. We got rid of the rule of I have to be 100% certain that there's no issues in my body. I have to be able to leave whenever I want to leave. I have to have someone else with me, etc. And we even got the mind to stop focusing on trying to feel certain or safe or comfortable, period, at all. Okay, which was really cool. And by doing it this way, what's really neat is that Tom no longer had to do any daily maintenance, right? So he no longer had to have coping mechanisms, to respond to his anxious thoughts. He didn't need to meditate or do breathing exercises while he was driving because there were no thoughts to try to get rid of anymore, which is kind of cool. So in about 90 days, we got it so his brain was following the new rules by default. And again, we want to do all of this in just 90 days, right? We don't want to spend years on this. We don't want to spend all this time analyzing and dissecting and ruminating. We just want to get the brain rewired and get you back to living the life that you've always wanted to, but anxiety has been keeping you from. Okay. And what that does is that rules out again, like all of the other strategies that are out there, because every other strategy out there is about how to cope with this, right? And you don't have time for coping. I mean, we cannot put you in a position where you are constantly responding to every anxious thought that comes up. Those strategies take forever and they usually don't even work, even after years of trying them. And if you have major agoraphobia, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but like that is a problem now, right? It is affecting your marriage now. It's affecting your children now. It's probably affecting your career and your earning potential now. Could be affecting your sleep. It's certainly, I'm sure, affecting your social life and your ability to just do what you want to do in your life now, right? And I am not exaggerating a single bit. You can watch the video. We did a public interview with Tom. It's on our site. You can find it. And he had agoraphobia for close to 30 years. It was at least 25 years. I know that. And he basically lived his entire life within a 20-mile radius from his home, right? So he told me he had never even taken an overnight trip with his wife away from home until after he finished using this method. It was only after he started using this that then they finally took a trip away from home. He had to miss Thanksgivings, birthdays, social events, right? 30 years of missed experiences of living in the same little circle on planet Earth that he would never really get back. And thankfully, we got the agoraphobia dealt with while he still had a lot of life ahead of him. I mean, he's well into his, I think 50s or 60s now, but it's not too late, right? He's still got life ahead of him. But people with agoraphobia, they tend to wait until it's too late. They hope that they're going to eventually just feel calm eventually, and it doesn't happen until you retrain the brain. And if you're dealing with agoraphobia, your coworkers, your spouse, your kids, your family, your friends, they need you to be at your best right now. I had a call with a woman recently. It broke my heart, but basically her son was giving a presentation. He was a high schooler and he had been invited to give a special presentation, like a motivational speech somewhere, and she felt she could not be there because of her agoraphobia, right? She hired a team to go and record the event. I mean, tragic, like horribly tragic. And when it's so simple, it's so absolutely simple to get the agoraphobia dealt with. It doesn't take a lot of effort or time to do it. And if you're dealing with this now, you don't have time hoping that another 6 months of some new therapy is going to work, right? You could end up losing your marriage or career by then. It could end up affecting your children by then if it hasn't already. It probably is, by the way. If they're over the age of 6, I guarantee you your anxiety or agoraphobia is affecting them, and it's affecting how they are learning how to operate in the world. Most parents believe that they're protecting their kids by not showing their anxiety, but that doesn't matter. Kids pick up on how you feel. They don't pick up on what you show. They can feel what's really going on with you. So that whole idea is just a myth that parents tell themselves to protect themselves from believing they're affecting their kids. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just telling you this is what it is. When kids start developing mental health issues, it's usually between ages 7 to 13. And so, right in that range, the vast majority of kids who develop their own mental health challenges, it occurs when the parent has an unresolved mental health challenge. So, 9 times out of 10, whenever I've had clients where they have kids with mental health issues, if we simply deal with the mental health and/or marital issues of the parents, then the kids end up being just fine. So that's just another key thing to understand is you're not actually putting your kids first by delaying getting your own mental health put together. You're actually negatively affecting your kids. Okay, so how do we do this, right? If we don't have time for coping and we don't want to continue to impact the people that we love in a negative way, how do we do that, right? What does that look like? Well, basically, the process of rewriting the rules of the game is a simple little four-part process to make that happen. So imagine you have this board game, right? You're frustrated with it. You keep trying to play it, but you keep losing. And so what you do is you come to me, I'm a board game expert or whatever, and I use my spiffy little checklist to basically help you identify each and every one of the problems that's making the game unwinnable. Right. So then what we do is we systematically rewrite the rules so your mind automatically follows the right guidelines. Okay, so what that means is number one, we have to uncover your existing set of rules and we have to uncover each and every one of them, right? After all, we cannot change something that we don't even know exists in the first place. And we don't have to guess. I mean, after seeing so many hundreds of agoraphobia cases, it's very easy to predict and identify the underlying beliefs causing the issue. Number two, we go through the checklist of the 7 types of rules that cause anxiety. We systematically remove all of the old rules that are causing you to lose. Third, we actually set you up with what you need to do to be able to play a winnable game. So we set out what your new belief system needs to be in order to ensure that you absolutely get the life that you desire for sure. And then fourth, and maybe most importantly, we use conditioning strategies, not coping strategies, to train the brain to adopt the new rules by default. So you don't even have to think about it anymore, and you're running on autopilot in the positive way as opposed to running on autopilot in the negative way, which is what you're probably used to. And there's a couple of reasons why this is awesome. Okay, so firstly, this is a proven process. As we've said, I've been teaching this successfully and consistently for 8 years. And that's why I've become, kind of an underground industry leader, and others have been taking notice. So, one quote from molecular psychiatry here is that studies support that anxiety is a learned response and it can be unlearned through brain retraining techniques. From the University of College London, quote, our research shows that with the right tools, the brain can be conditioned to respond differently to anxiety, enabling long term relief. Okay, this is also awesome, not just because it's proven, but because it takes you from deeply anxious to anxiety free in just a matter of a few months, right? Even with extreme anxiety or agoraphobia, it doesn't really matter, right? It's always just a matter of identify, eliminate, and rewire. That's it. Okay. Next, rewriting your subconscious beliefs is actually something you've been doing for your whole life anyway. It's just that you've never known how to do it intentionally. I mean, after all, you weren't born with the belief of, I can only feel safe if I never leave my home again. That didn't happen. You developed that belief over time. It's also awesome. This method is also awesome because you never have to worry about managing your anxious thoughts ever again, right? Because you're actually dismantling the underlying beliefs that are causing them in the first place. Okay, in addition to that, there's no band-aid solutions, no dredging up tons of drama from the past, no talking in circles, no comfortable exposure stuff, no excessive use of willpower just to push through, no more repression. Okay, rather than feeling like you are adding more things that you have to do in order to get through the day, now you are actually letting things go, which is really cool. It's like finding all of the pebbles in your shoe and removing them instead of just taking painkillers to be able to walk. Okay. Additionally, it's awesome because it doesn't make you reliant on a therapist or a prescription or even me, right? You now are learning how to play the game of life from the inside out, where you are in charge of how you feel, instead of playing the game of life from the outside in, where you're requiring all of these things outside of your control to go a certain way in order for you to feel okay. It's also awesome because you now learn a set of skills that you will never forget. You become immune to relapse because you now know how to keep from adopting any kind of limiting subconscious beliefs in the future. You can teach this to your spouse, to your kids. And what that ends up doing in a lot of cases is you basically become the breaker of a generational cycle of mental health issues. And rather than the vicious cycles of anxiety, you tap into the virtuous cycles where everything continues to improve in your life, right? Your relationships get easier, career gets easier, kids get easier, finances gets easier, everything gets easier. So as soon as Tom implemented this method, right, his marriage improved because they started doing more things together. Added more variety to their lives. His friendships and family relationships improved because he actually felt able to go and see them, and his enjoyment of his job improved because he finally felt fully comfortable in his own skin when he was away from home. And by retraining his brain to feel comfortable in the environments that he previously thought were unsafe, we basically helped him learn how to take his comfort zone with him wherever he wanted. Okay, so do you see how powerful this is, right? I want you to just imagine for a second, like the amount of relief that would come from eliminating all of the deep-rooted anxiety-causing beliefs that you've collected over the years. Imagine what that would like free you up to do, right? What would that would finally make possible? And what most people don't realize is every anxiety-causing subconscious belief, it's basically like an emergency brake being pulled, right? So what a lot of people do is they keep trying to jam on the gas as hard as they can to go push themselves to do things in life, but you don't realize what's holding you back because it's subconscious, right? So now our copycats, what's interesting is that they always get the subconscious belief identification part wrong, as well as the elimination and replacement piece. And so what ends up happening is that they end up providing a lot of surface level strategies that simply help people like respond to and manage their thoughts rather than keep them from coming back in the first place. And that creates a lifetime of coping, which is not great. And what I want you to understand is when you do this the right way, this has worked to not only keep myself anxiety free for 15 years since I was hospitalized, but over the past 8 years of doing this professionally, it's helped 612 clients just like you. It's also going to keep working for another 8 years because the human brain doesn't change, right? I've done this with clients as young as 13, as old as 84. Does not matter how long you've struggled, doesn't matter how severe the anxiety is. Everyone thinks they're a special snowflake. I promise you. I mean, yes, you are special and unique, but your anxiety and agoraphobia is not special and unique. I promise you. It doesn't matter what kind of anxiety you're dealing with. Most people aren't dealing with like just agoraphobia, but doesn't really matter because we can always root out all of the subconscious beliefs that are causing each and every piece of the anxiety. And if you've been looking at all of the coping strategies and feel good content out there, but it leaves you feeling empty, like there's a piece missing, basically. Like if you, it leaves you thinking like, God, I don't want to have to deal with this forever. I really just want to be normal again. Can someone please just give me something tangible and common sense that I can implement right away? I'm telling you, there is a way to get your brain to feel content and think positively by default in just about 12 weeks without having to rely on ineffective coping mechanisms and without being dependent on anything or anybody long term. And that's why, I've been in the business for 8 years and why we have the best track record of results in the industry. We don't get sucked into the fads. We don't get sucked into the trends. We don't try to hack the social media algorithm. We don't prioritize clicks and views over transformation. We have built our entire methodology on what does not change, and that is human psychology. And we also pride ourselves on taking care of our clients, making sure our clients feel taken care of from start to finish. And that's how we're able to take them from feeling deeply anxious on day one to automatically feeling content and thinking positively by default in just 90 days or less. And so now you have a choice. Okay. So you can keep trying to do these coping mechanisms that don't work, that you don't like, and that you've already been trying for who knows how long. You can keep doing the same thing and hope that something changes, which is the definition of insanity. I mean, I was doing that for a while too. No, no harm, no foul, right? But it's silly for us to think that way. You can keep, of course, hoping that something changes on its own, but we all know that hope is not a good strategy, right? In fact, it's not a strategy at all. It's delegating the responsibility and the power to something or someone else instead of being the one in control of where your life and mental health is going. Or you can rationalize that now isn't the right time to do this and, allow yourself to kick back onto autopilot where all of your current patterns of thinking take back over, and before you know it, it's another 12 months or more, and it just disappears like that, right? And the thing you want to ask yourself is like, when is the right time to finally be able to feel comfortable leaving your home? Right? What could be a higher priority than that? What could be more of a limit on your quality of life and your ability to live the life that you want than that? I can't think of a single other thing that would be of a higher priority. I mean, if you had let's say you got in a car accident and you had a physical injury, and all of a sudden you were like bound to your home. I'm pretty sure your number one priority would be, how do I fix this issue so that I can be able to get up and go out and about and live my life, right? There'd be no thing that would be of a higher priority than that. But for some reason, when it comes to like anxiety and agoraphobia, people push it way down on the list of priorities. And I think it comes from either one, believing it's not possible, but it totally is. And quite honestly, I'll just tell you, like, you have to adopt the belief system of, I can and I will do this. The thing that made it possible for me, I'll tell you that this is what made it possible for me. I thought I was going to be destined to have anxiety for the rest of my life and depression too. And then I encountered someone who had overcome it. And when I finally really heard their story, part of me wanted to resist and be like, no, 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 you don't understand. My situation's different. That's good for you. That's great. But my anxiety, my depression, it's unovercomable. And what I had to realize is I was choosing to believe that as a way to protect myself from the fear of trying to change and then failing. And so I realized that if was committed to believing I was never going to change my issue, then I surely was going to stay stuck forever because I would stop trying. And what I realized is if I instead chose to believe that I can and I will overcome this because somebody else has done it. So I might need to do things a little bit differently than them. We might not be identical twins, but there's got to be a way for me to be able to overcome that. Once I adopted that idea, I started to become unstoppable. And then the next belief, there was that belief, I can do this and I will do this. And then the second belief that really cemented my anxiety recovery and got me on the path was, I will not tolerate living with anxiety anymore. Because what I've realized is that we don't get in life what we want. We get in life what we tolerate. And most people are busy tolerating their anxiety, tolerating their agoraphobia, even though they don't like it. And they wonder why it still sticks around. If you tolerate it, it sticks around. You have to embrace an attitude of, I will not tolerate this agoraphobia any longer. It's the cost it's creating for my family, for my kids, for my career, for myself is too much. It's too high. You got to embrace that attitude or else you'll stay stuck. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic. I'm not like trying to say, I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just saying that is what happens. I've seen it play out. I've been in the industry long enough to know, like, this is the path. This is the fork in the road right here. So if you are serious, right, and if you're serious about getting this done, what we've done is that I have set aside a little bit of time to help you. I am more than happy to always set aside time to help people who really, really want the help. Okay. And over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours, there's a couple slots available where you can book a time to speak with me. And basically, what's going to happen is, on that call, I will help you identify what the major subconscious beliefs are that are causing your anxiety for you. Yours are not going to be exactly the same as Tom's. Number two, I will help you identify the ones that you need to replace them with. Third, I'm going to help you get clear on the 2 to 3 conditioning strategies that will help you make the changes automatic. And then four, I'm going to hand you a proven roadmap to lasting recovery and relapse prevention. Okay, so it's just a phone call. It's not that long, but we are going to get a lot done in that short period of time. And I'm going to show you the exact steps that you can take to make sure that you overcome the agoraphobia for once and for all. And I'm going to custom make for you a roadmap to live every day with calm, peace, joy, and the ability to be present for the ones that you love. Okay, pretty cool, right? And my goal is literally just to convince you I can help you by actually helping you. Okay, fair enough. And my promise to you is this call is going to shave years off of your learning curve to finally getting the mental health that you desire and that you deserve. And that is really the reason why we do this. We want to make sure that you're not getting pulled astray by any of these outdated tactics that don't work and that you're using the stuff that is proven, right? That's tried and true. It beautifully sets you up for your mind to stop having the automatic anxious thoughts for good. So I recently had a gentleman who had watched a couple of my videos and then decided to do a call, and he said this afterwards. He said, "This is what I've been craving for from years of therapy, and I've never received it." All right. I can't tell you how many times you've said something that I felt on an atomic level. That's what he said. So these calls are completely, totally for free. There is a catch though, which is that these are who these calls are for, right? So number one, getting your agoraphobia and anxiety truly dealt with at the core must be a must. Okay. Please don't book the call if your anxiety is pretty much under control or isn't really bothering you that much. Okay. We only want to focus on helping the people who are in a lot of pain, who need it. You know what I mean? And then also, you must be coachable and willing to implement what I teach you, right? Because this model, it's so simple, so effective that every person who will implements it is going to get control over their agoraphobia. We don't want anyone taking up a time slot who isn't going to implement what we teach them, because what it does is it then robs someone else of a guaranteed change in their quality of life. Okay. So just go ahead, click the button below this video to grab a spot, or if you're watching this on social media, just go ahead and leave a comment below with the word session. We'll reach out to you personally via Messenger and we can book a time that works for you. However, if you're on a landing page, if you see this video on a landing page, you can just hit the button below. Quick window will pop up. It'll look like this. You can grab a time that works for you. Just make sure you pick a time that you will commit to showing up. We don't rebook no-shows, and spaces are very limited. The calendar fills up fast, so grab your spot now. And in closing, I just want to say, hey, thanks for hanging out with me today. And I want you to understand that this ability I've showed you how to do, right? How to identify, eliminate, replace all these anxiety-causing beliefs in your subconscious. This is the single most important thing that you can know how to do to live a life without agoraphobia or anxiety. And you can spend the next 5 years trying coping mechanisms that have already been proven to be ineffective, hoping that something changes on its own, or waiting for some magic moment when it feels easy and just right to tackle this. Or you can just prioritize yourself and the people you love and deal with this really limiting problem by solving it with a simple, simple, simple process like this. It is the simplest possible approach. And when you do it right, it's really the only system that ensures that you deal with the problem at the root and that you establish your long-term independence. No crutches, no band-aid solutions, no roundabout passive strategies, and no temporary pump-up BS. Just rewiring the brain to think positively by default in a way that sets you up for a lifetime without agoraphobia or anxiety, so you can show up for those that you love in the way they are craving to see you. Okay. So anyway, my name is Ty Hicks. Go ahead, click the button below or type the word session below, whichever option you see. I'll look forward to helping you out here in the next couple days. Take care for now. See ya.